Hey, it's Jolene at Lady of the Huddle. Before we jump into lesson 2 of Christian objectivism, I wanted just to make a note from the previous lesson. In the first video, I said that consciousness, the axiom of consciousness, is a corollary of the axiom of existence, and that's not correct. There are two related axioms. They are inseparable. All three axioms are inseparable from one another, but corollary means something that follows after. And when we talk about existence and consciousness, they're related. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how existence is primary over consciousness, but consciousness isn't a corollary. They're both the foundational building blocks. So, as a review, philosophy is a system of thought. It is your method of thinking, and you have a philosophy. It's just a matter of whether you have, again, a hodgepodge of ideas without a formalized structure, or do you have a structure to your philosophy? And in objectivism, Ayn Rand proposes that you start with the very foundation, the three basic axioms, and build up your philosophy from there. You're going to be a lot more prepared for life and thinking through the things that you encounter in life. As just a quick review, the first three axioms are existence exists. There is something, not nothing, and you can see it as evident in the world around you. There is a mouse, there is a book, and it goes from there. The second axiom is consciousness. I am a thing. I am aware of the existence around me. And the third axiom is the law of identity that you can't contradict. A is A. Each item or thing in reality has its own identity. It acts according to its own nature, has its own characteristics and attributes. And a thing is a thing. A is A, and you can't contradict it. So I hope you look forward to this next lesson, and let's get started.
Hey, it's Jolene at Lady of the Huddle. Welcome to lesson 2 of Christian objectivism. Today we're going to talk about the law of causality and the primacy of existence over consciousness. These topics of discussion can be found in Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, or OPAR for short, which is written by Leonard Peikoff. The topics of today's discussion can be found on pages 12 through 23 of the book. As a way of review, last time we talked about the three basic axioms for the philosophy of objectivism, or the way to think. We have existence, consciousness, and the law of identity. These three axioms can be summed up as existence exists, there is something, not nothing. I am aware of existence, I am a thing, and the law of identity says that everything in existence has its own characteristics, its own attributes, its own nature. All of these three together are the foundation and the building blocks for the rest of the philosophy. Peikoff talks about how the growth of the mind of a child to grasp these three axioms takes time. It takes a process, and it takes integration. So it makes sense that as you're trying to learn these things, you're trying to formalize and develop these ideas together to build the entire system of philosophy. Today, in this section, he talks about the concept of entity. Entity is a thing perceived, or something that exists. So something, right? An entity is a something. And each entity has its own identity. Again, its own attributes, characteristics, its own nature. So these are three entities. We have a tree, we have a ball, and we have a book. And each entity has its own identity, which means a tree will have the nature of a tree. It will not act like a ball. A ball has the nature of a ball, and a book has the nature of a book. The book also says that the word action is the name for what entities do. When you understand entity, identity, and action, Altogether, then, you can reach the law of causality. So if you think of cause, right, causality, it's effectively cause and effect. So law of causality is how things act. An entity of a certain kind acts in a certain way. And that's basically summing up the law of causality. An entity of a certain kind acts in a certain way. So think of a baby's rattle. If you shake a baby's rattle, it'll act different than if you shake a pillow, right? They have different natures and therefore will act in a different way. If you roll a ball, it'll act in a certain way versus rolling a book. Will not act in the same way because they are two different entities with different identities. Also think if you drop or let go of a block, it will fall. And if you let go of a balloon filled with helium, it will float. Each thing in nature, each existent, right, each entity will act according to its nature. And an entity must act in accordance with its nature. Something can only act like itself. Once again, a tree can only act like a tree. It cannot act like a ball, right? A ball can only act like a ball. It cannot act like a book. You can't flip through the pages of a ball because it's not a book. It is something else. Otherwise, if you take something and try to make it act like against its nature or act like something else, that would be a contradiction. And if you are a true, honest, and rational man, you will agree that there can be no contradiction. You cannot contradict reality. So, what we said for the law of identity, A is A. That's what the law of identity is. Something is itself. And a contradiction then would be A is not A, literally the opposite of what it is, or something other than what it is. And that would be a contradiction. And there can be no contradiction between rational men and their thinking. The sum of the law of causality, quote, is the law of identity applied to action. All actions are caused by entities. The nature of an action is caused and determined by the nature of the entities that act, and a thing cannot act in contradiction to its nature, end quote. In other words, something acts in a certain way because of its nature, and it can't act against its nature. So this too is self-evident. It should be obvious, right? A tree must act like a tree. It can't act other than its nature. Otherwise, it would no longer be a tree. The tree can't act as a vehicle. A balloon acts different than a pumpkin. If something, some entity, something acts other than its nature, then it would not be that thing. It would be a contradiction. Another quote from OPAR, quote, causality is best classified as a corollary of identity. And let me pause. Remember at the beginning of this video, I shared how I misused the word corollary in the first video. Corollary is something that follows after. So the three axioms all are related. They all work together to build the foundation, but one doesn't necessarily follow after another. So again, quote, causality is best classified as a corollary of identity. A corollary is a self-evident, means you can see it, it's obvious, implication of already established knowledge. Like an axiom, it is self-evident once its context has been grasped. It is, in effect, a new angle on an established principle, which follows immediately once one grasps its meaning and the principle on which it depends. So, a corollary, see, these are the three axioms. A corollary would say, okay, these axioms, then, therefore, this. Okay, and that's what the law of causality is saying. If you understand and grasp the three axioms, then what follows is the idea of causality, and it should be self-evident and make sense, right? You have things that exist. You are aware of them, and each of those things has its own identity. And then saying something is not itself is a contradiction. Okay? And then from those you would say, okay, if that's true, then things that act like themselves, I perceive that they act like themselves. They will, cause and effect. A tree will act like a tree. That should be self-evident. Okay. Here I want to point out one error that Ayn Rand makes. She says, quote, "The concept of cause is inapplicable to the universe. The universe simply is," end quote. And obviously we're talking about Christian objectivism. She built the foundation of objectivism, and now we are taking it and applying it to reality, which is God made this universe. The universe isn't simply is. God is, right? God is. He is his own identity. He's his own entity. And he has always been, always will be. He is the great I am. And just because he is different than everything else in the universe doesn't mean that then he doesn't exist. He just has his own identity, his own attributes, his own characteristics that make who he is. And that entity, God, acted and created the universe. The universe isn't simply is. Psalm 90 verse 2 says that he is God from everlasting to everlasting. He always was and always will be. Isaiah 43:10 says, "Before me there was no God that was formed." Nobody created God. He is the uncaused cause. He has always been, and he was not created, yet he is the one who created the universe. He himself is the embodiment of being and of existence. So the law of causality in sum says that entities cause actions. So an entity, based on its nature, causes its actions, certain actions. Something acts according to its nature. The next section in OPAR then talks about the existence. Existence is primacy over consciousness. If you think of the word primacy, it's kind of like first place. And again, we're talking about order of importance, but all of these three, again, make the one solid foundation of philosophy. So as a child grows, it discovers that if it closes its eyes, everything disappears. And when it opens its eyes, it reappears. So that shows you that it doesn't matter whether you are perceiving, whether you are conscious, whether you are aware, existence exists. And that's all that it really means for existence to have primacy over consciousness. It means like literally if I step out of the room, everything here still exists. It exists independent of me. It does not depend on me in order to exist, right? So you can observe, you can look, you can perceive, and you can grasp what is. But again, everything that is exists independent of me. And here I'm going to give just a little example to demonstrate that. Okay. Let it dry for a second. So this is an example of how you can know that existence is primary over consciousness. So we have a volcano. We have a volcano. The volcano is erupting, and the lava is flowing out toward the village. Now, what you have is the rational man. The rational man will perceive the volcano, become alarmed, and then act, right? What would a rational man do? Quick, run away, right? It doesn't matter what he thinks. It doesn't matter what he feels. All that matters is what's real, what's true, right? What's true is that the volcano is erupting and it's coming after him. It's flowing towards him. It's not actively coming after him, but it's flowing towards him. And the rational man will recognize reality and then act accordingly. The nature of a volcano, right, of the lava is that it's hot, and if it touches you, you will die, right? So he runs away. So he recognizes that this is real. Okay. Now you have the irrational man who thinks that his consciousness is primacy over existence. And he thinks that if you can just ignore the volcano, pretend that you're blind to it, wishes it away. Again, all that matters is reality, right? It's happening, it's real. So if he chooses to ignore it because he doesn't want it to be there, because he feels like it shouldn't be there, it doesn't matter. What matters is reality, and reality has real consequences. So if he chooses to ignore the volcano, he will be destroyed because of those consequences. So again, existence exists apart from consciousness. But again, these are the foundations of building your system of thought. So it involves you because you observe existence, and that's how you build your way of thinking. So things are, no matter whether we are conscious of them or not. Consciousness, quote, is the power to grasp, to find out, and to discover that which is. It's not a power to alter or control the nature of objects. Consciousness simply is this: you observe, you perceive that which exists. If you have consciousness and say that that has primacy, then you're saying that something can be something else if you wish it to be so. But I can wish all I want for the book to become something else, but that's not reality. I cannot do that. Okay, and here is where I want to point out another error that Ayn Rand makes. It's true. So what we said is you can't have primacy over consciousness. Existence has primacy, has first place in the correct order. And she uses that to refute the existence of God, who is conscious, right? But God is not consciousness floating apart from reality, right? He is reality. He is existence. He is what existence all flows from and comes from. He is the great I am. He is an eternal being. The thing is what she doesn't understand or recognize is that he has his own identity. Like I said before, he's the uncaused cause. Just because he's other than everything else in existence doesn't mean that he then doesn't exist. He just has his own nature, his own identity. And he is apart from, not necessarily, he is reality. He's not apart from reality. He is reality. And he just is like the one thing that is existence who also is conscious, right? He's all that together in one. Objectivism as a philosophy says how human minds think, and our consciousness depends on reality and existence, right? So we observe what is. God is the existence that always was, always has been, always will be. And from him, he created all other existence. And all other existence has objective natures. Okay, so in summary, today we talked about the law of causality, and that effectively says entities act according to their nature. They each have their own identity, and they act according to what it is. And the second thing we talked about is existence over consciousness. Existence exists apart from our consciousness. But philosophy, again, is us observing the things in existence to build how to think. Truth isn't true because you want it to be, because you feel it should be, because you hope it should be. Truth is outside of yourself. It's true despite you, right? And it's objective and based in reality. So keep these things in mind as we proceed through our learning of this book. Truth is true outside of yourself. So this philosophy helps build the thinking of how to do that, how to determine what's true and how to judge for yourself. Thank you for watching today's video. We'll see you next time.